Say I've sold you a property and then years later you found you were being hit by all sorts of charges and costs and limits on what you could do with it. How would you feel?
Angry. Stroppy, well, more than
usual. Yeah. It's hard to imagine, but
and
yeah.
I'd say this is unfair.
Well, indeed, and this is exactly the situation that some people find themselves in when they buy leasehold properties. Now, leasehold is, in effect, you're purchasing the right to live in a property for a set number of years, anything from 99 to 125 to 999 years. But sometimes these leases impose fairly hefty obligations, such as ground rent and other costs as well.
Service charge, yes, well, we've all been there. But people want to know what they're committing to at that moment.
Well, that's the problem. In some cases, it seems they don't, and the Consumer and Markets Authority is going to investigate whether people are being missold and whether they're being given all the information they need. Let's speak more about this to George Lusty, who is Senior Director for Consumer Enforcement at the Consumer and Markets Authority. George, good to have you with us. So, are there any particularly extreme examples where this is really causing problems for people?
We've heard about people who have signed up to a leasehold contract and then found that the annual fee that they pay doubles every 10 years. And in some cases that can make the property unsellable, or they can't get a mortgage on it. Others have been told that they could buy out the freehold on their property for just a few £1,000s, and then they subsequently find it's going to cost tens of thousands of pounds. That's why we've launched an investigation, because we want to get to the bottom of these issues and try and solve the problem.
I was going to say, George, because, you know, it's all very well hearing it anecdotally, but is there any evidence that it is actually widespread or systemic?
So one of the House of Commons committees looked into this and estimated that about 100,000 people could potentially be affected by leasehold contracts with these problematic terms in them. But we've started an investigation today, and we're going to use our formal powers to gather information from the developers, the freeholders, to try and understand the extent of the problem and see what we can do about it.
And you say formal powers. What powers does the CMA have to deal with this kind of thing?
Well, our consumer enforcement powers allow us to gather information from companies. If they don't give us that information, we can take them to court. So we expect that they will give us everything that we need to help us get a handle on the problem.
And George, I just wonder, in some situations, and surely these fees, these charges are unavoidable. Say the roof on a block of flats needs urgent repairs. You've bought the leasehold, you're committing to pay a share of that if necessary, but for some people they just simply cannot afford to take that hit financially. So is there any way that they can be protected?
So I think when it comes to fees that are properly incurred and which relate to genuine costs that between them the leaseholders in an area need to meet, that's less likely to be a problem than some of these ground rent and other fees which are charged, which don't really seem to relate to a particular service that is provided, but are just doubled arbitrarily or multiplied in some way. We can't see how that is justified, and we want to get to the bottom of it and reach a view about whether they may be unfair.
OK, George, thanks very much for explaining that. George Lusty there from the Consumer and Markets Authority.